Welcome, everyone, to the May 28th edition of the Signals from Mars live stream. I'm your host, Victor. As usual, we are brought to you by the Mars Attacks podcast. You will find this episode in audio form in roughly a week on the Mars Attacks podcast. Joining me today is Mr. Chris Czynszak, best known for his work soloing all over. Well, not soloing. He's actually got the dual guitar solos. He's like Adrian Smith and Dave Murray on the Decibel Geek podcast there. And he's Mr. ROCKNPOD. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat as well. We have Jeremy in the UK. We have Jose up in Connecticut joining us. And again, I kind of cut you off there. So good to hear that you are doing well. We are roughly 2 months and a week away from ROCKNPOD.
Yep. It's right around the corner.
It's actually, if you go to Nashville ROCKNPOD Expo.com, you will see the exact countdown. Which, had I been prepared, I would have had that open. Wow. 2 months, 8 days, 4 hours, 57 minutes, and 15 seconds, folks.
Yeah, that and when we get down to the last week, that countdown clock's going to give me a heart attack every day, I'm sure.
I was going to say the countdown clock explodes, but hopefully it's not your heart. It's just
I know. Yeah, having two months still, I'm okay right now. I'm still holding it together.
Like around when do you start to really get flustered?
Once we get into July, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll really crank up then. I mean, I'm not flustered. I'm pretty overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that we still have to do, but
right.
That's just par for the course. I think I get better at handling it a little bit more each year, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, by far. I can attest to this, having worked on the website for the last 3 years, 4 years technically, but since last year didn't happen. That's right. But I can attest to the fact that there hasn't been with George there's this old George Carlin quote that I use from time to time where he says, "I'm pregnant, you're the father, and I'm going to kill all three of us." And he comes back with, "Calm down, have some dip." We haven't had one of those moments really yet this year, where other years right from the get-go, that
Mhm.
takes place. But I think also, given that you've been working with Rock and Pod for these many years already, it is only a few years, but at the same time, word is getting out there. People are getting to know the expo. So it seems to me from the outside looking in that it's easier to try to go after people and convince them what Rock and Pod is all about now,
Yeah.
as opposed to even, the last edition that took place back in 2019.
Yeah, and there's less of me explaining what exactly it is. I mean, that's the first 2-3 years that was like the hardest thing was, and there's sometimes I still have a hard time describing because there's so many different facets to it because it's kind of it's a fan convention, it's a trade show, it's a there's concerts, there's other events, there's a lot going on. I just call it a weekend celebration of rock and roll and music podcasting, but yeah, that it seems like we're getting more well known every year. Definitely we've had more excitement for this one than we ever have before. I mean,
Right.
and maybe the year off and everybody ready to get out of the house. I'm sure that had an effect on it too. But
Sure.
over the last year, I've been also worried, like, well, maybe people forgot about it. Maybe people are gonna be like, I went the first couple of years. I don't need to go this year. And I was afraid there's gonna be less people that would be interested. But it's been pretty overwhelming. I mean, like we've got more guests, we've got more podcasts and internet radio shows this year, and VIP sales are now done. We've sold out of those. We've met our contractual obligation with the hotel, but there are still rooms in the block left, and we're happy to keep filling those rooms. But yeah, we're way ahead of where we were 2 years ago. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said that VIP tickets are sold out, but they're sold out for regular guests. They're sold out for podcasters as well. So there's a lot of stuff that isn't available to people. I know there are a few people that I've had discussions with behind the scenes that came up to me or, messaged me, hey, can I still get on board with, to do this or to do that? And you flat out told me, no, those are gone.
Yeah.
We have no space. We can't do it.
Yeah, that's the I hate saying no to people, but it's one of those things where when you gotta look at how much space you have and how many shows you can realistically fit into the ballroom and the area you have.
Right.
But I mean, if you're a podcaster though and you're watching this though, I mean, you can still come. It's the part that's sold out is the podcaster platinum ticket, which is basically the ticket that allows you to have your own table and to get into the interviews and stuff. But we still have good stuff for podcasters that they want to come. We have the education track. We're going to have several really cool speakers that are going to be, sharing how to grow your audience, how to monetize your show, or if you want to get into podcasting, how to just start a show, your gear set up and all that stuff. And that's if you can register as a podcaster for that. We're also going to have like and for all with like a basic and a gold package still available for that. And also, we're going to do a podcaster cocktail mixer on Friday before everything starts. So if you're a registered podcaster, you can come to that. It's really the first event of the weekend, and it's pretty exclusive. It's just to the people that are registered podcasters. And that's probably the most fun for a lot of people because it's everybody kind of getting their boots on the ground and getting to interact with everybody. So there's still good value if you're a podcaster, but also the VIP things went fast, but there's still plenty of general admission and early admission tickets, and that still gets you into the expo. That still gets you access to the live podcast sessions. You can see all the main stage panels, access to the vendors and all that stuff. There's still room for people. It's just the higher exclusive stuff is sold out right now.
Gotcha. Okay. And these are some of the podcasts, or these are the podcasts that will be there. They're listed in order of confirmation that they would appear. Ages of Rock, Mama Mary's Metal Mayhem, an Obscura podcast, the Slamfest podcast. Look, it's rock and roll, the rock and metal professors, I guess. State of America, a Black Rose podcast. Yeah, I don't get paid to read. Sorry.
I should have sent you that video that I created the other day that has all the logos and stuff on it. We should have just played that.
We could have just played that. See, hindsight is always 2020. Look at that. Asylum Radio Network. And I can actually do this. See, I'm trying to be Mr. Fancy Pants here, and then it turns out that that I could have just done this instead.
What are you going to do?
This here.
Well, and we still have some logos to add to this too, though.
Okay. Well, if the boss doesn't tell me to add logos, I don't add logos.
That's on me, not on you. Hey, David.
The Asylum Radio Network, The Kiss Room, A to Z Radio, Let It Rip, Disciples of the Watch, Cobras and Fire, The Plug, Artifact, Mistress Carrie, Rachel's Rock Refuge, Midwest Metal Show, The Metal Summit, All Things Blues and Southern Rock, Music City Mayhem,
Metal,
Sly Dog Music Cast, Rock, The Rocker Life, and 97 Underground. What other podcasts are we missing?
Oh, there's several that we need to add to that page. It's just been a matter of getting everything to you so we can get it updated. But that'll be updated in the next few days.
Okay, cool. And I just added 2 new guests today, which are Toby Wright and Andre LaBelle, who were both returning to ROCKNPOD.
Yeah, excited to have both of those guys back. You know, Toby, it was a little touch and go because he's no longer living in the Nashville area, but really, really wanted to come back, and we made it work, and we're getting him back out here.
And so he gave up the Nashville way of life for the sun and fun of California.
Yeah, moved back to LA. I don't know what's wrong with him.
Maybe he's getting tired of all the Californians being in Nashville, and he needs to go back to California where there's less Californians.
That'd be funny if it was like been like reverse, the reverse of what happened. Everybody ends up moving back.
Right.
That'd be hilarious.
Yeah. So we confirmed those 2 today. You sent the information to me. I posted it. Are there still any guests to be named?
Yes, there are.
Okay. I will not try to pry the information from you. I don't want to TMZ you here. I don't want to.
I would like to do it, but I get so much grief from the guys on my own stream that they're like, "Well, we'll just get you drunk, and then you'll just spit out who's coming." And I've put my foot in my mouth a few times, so I don't want to spoil anything. So, yeah, we got some good ones coming up soon, though.
I know of 2, but I won't give those away.
I know. Yeah, I think you know more than that. I may have told you about more than that, but I did Facebook message you that podcaster logo video. I don't know if you can play it though. Okay. Let me see. It'd be cool to see it played on here if you're able to.
Yeah.
But
okay. I don't. I didn't want to spoil it, but I just want to mention that Chris has arranged for the original members of Mini Kiss to be at the expo.
No, can't do that. That would be a problem. It would be a small problem, but it would be a problem. Hey, those guys did a Dr. Pepper commercial. I can't afford them.
Well, we're talking about real celebrities here.
Yeah, those are real celebrities right there. And David Cathy says, "Dang, I was going to go out to get drinks, but now I can't use that excuse." If it's between looking at me and Victor and getting drinks, I think you made the wrong choice. But that's just my opinion.
All right.
Oh, there it is.
Here we go.
It's got sound on it.
Does it? Why does the sound? Oh,
because I put like fancy music to it.
All right, here we go. And
Pretty
Mr.
cool, right?
Czynszak has just effectively demonetized this video.
No, that's copyright free music. I made sure.
I was assuming. I'm just busting your ass. David Cathy's, is that how you pronounce it? Or David Cathy? David
Cathy.
Okay, Cathy. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe after looking at us, maybe he's doing that. Maybe he's looking at us first so that it entices him to drink even more later.
It sure would me. I know that.
You've mentioned also that this is an entire weekend extravaganza. It is, as you've said, a celebration. Sorry, you say that and I think of Charlie Murphy and Rick James, but
celebration.
Friday, you mentioned the get together beforehand, but you also have the pre-party for the expo. We'll have Tommy, formerly of Tesla, and his new band Resistant Bite playing. Plus, it's also
Ron Keel Acoustic.
And the headliner.
Well, Resistant Bite's technically the headliner, but the closing out the night will be one of Tyson Leslie's Rare Hair Jams. It's going to be probably about 100 different players doing, several songs over an hour and a half. And several of the expo guests are going to get up and do songs, and some of them from doing songs from throughout their catalog. So it'll be cool. And Tommy's band they're going to do obviously their own original material, but they will do several Tesla songs at that show. So that should be pretty cool.
Okay. So will we be hearing any Primer 55?
I don't think so.
I kid. And a shout out and congratulations to Mr. Toomey for making it to Knotfest. That's huge.
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting for him to cancel on ROCKNPOD because he's too big for it now.
Now he's one of the big dogs.
He is. It's getting to go to festival shows and everything, getting major press. But no, I'm very happy for him, and I'm excited for him. He's worked really hard for this. So yeah, check out Talk to Me, and he's got a thing called like Throwback Thursday or something, or
Throwback Thursday on Knotfest.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the newest additions, and it's funny because obviously I know him through you. I've had him a few times on my podcast, and I was just recently trying to get him back on, and before all of this kind of happened. But a lot of the other people that were announced along with him, like Alicia Atut, I guess her name is. It's someone who's been on TV and had national coverage, and she's very well known in Canada and whatnot because she's Canadian, and she's part of that group that just went into Knotfest with Toomey. So it's kind of cool to kind of say, it's one of our boys that's getting in. So I think it's really cool.
And I'm hoping he'll get a plug for ROCKNPOD in there somewhere, as long as they'll allow it. That would be nice.
That would be awesome. Well, have him wear ROCKNPOD paraphernalia. You need to dress him up. ROCKNPOD caps, t-shirts, waiter jackets, anything from the waist up. Anything you think that can be, incorporated from the waist up, do it.
Yeah, that would be cool. I was really excited to hear that news for him, and I think he's pretty blown away by it. But yeah, I mean, he's earned it. He's worked hard for it. So my hat's off to him. I'm really excited for him. But yeah, I'm excited to see him coming back this year. Yeah, we have a lot of new shows coming this year, and I'm obviously excited to meet them. But several of the previous podcasts are coming back, and which always makes it like a family reunion, and
right.
I found out yesterday that our friend Sonny Pooney is actually going to be coming back this year. I didn't think he was going to make it this time, but he's coming back, and he's bringing his wife. So I expect him to be divorced by this time next year. But he doesn't drink, so maybe he'll get out of it unscathed.
Okay. Ages of Rock started after the first ROCKNPOD, didn't it?
No,
Wasn't
they were there as podcast the first year.
Okay, so I'm
Or
mixing
you're
them
thinking
up.
of Growing Up Rock.
Growing Up Rock. Growing Up
Yeah.
Rock formed after being at ROCKNPOD.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's
unless I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's how it worked. Yeah.
yeah,
We
that's
had a few shows have come out of people hanging out at Rock and Pod. It's been cool.
so that's like when people go away on vacation and come back pregnant. They ended up having Growing Up Rock.
Well,
While
I don't think anybody's getting pregnant at Rock and Pod. I could be wrong, but
well, I'm saying
I know
new
I'm just
shows
buzzing.
came along. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that, until you start getting I don't want to say a younger demographic where, but most of us that I
We're all
think
too
are
old to
part
have
of
children.
group, yeah, it's more likely that grandkids will come out of this than actual kids. But anyway,
I have been excited to see more female ticket buyers this year. So we'll actually have more women in the house this year, which is nice because
wow.
it has been a bit of a sausage convention in the previous years. Not that there's anything wrong with a bunch of guys, but it's nice to have a variety of people there.
Didn't at least one or two people criticize the fact that it was all black t-shirts and overweight guys the first year or second year?
If you're criticizing that, I guess you never go to any rock or metal shows because that's pretty much what that is.
Rock or metal shows or rock in general. I mean,
it's a bunch of us that go to rock shows meeting up. So what else would you expect it to be? But now, and we have some younger people that do podcasts and internet radio shows coming this year. So it's gotten more diverse as the years have gone on. So that's been exciting. But yeah, it's been great, and a lot to look forward to. It's going to be a really fun. There's certain things I want to announce that I can't right away, but there's going to be some really cool stuff this year.
And he's saying he can't because there's someone holding a gun behind, off camera. We can't see it. Yeah. So that's why he can't.
Events, and he's finally had enough. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh boy, I didn't. There are a few names that I didn't want to bring up tonight, but you had to broach the situation.
Wow, he's having his. I guess he's having his new bash this weekend. From what I heard. Is he? So yeah, so he's downtown at SIR right now. I guess
he's currently he's got pen to paper right now writing lyrics. Is that it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, for $3,500 a pop. Isn't that what it was? Yeah.
How many of them are his actual handwriting, do you think? And how many are actually someone else that wrote them and they're Xeroxing them?
No, I think let's get off this subject. It's although I'm not doing my live stream tonight, so we might as well talk about whatever we would have talked about. But no, it's I think it's his writing, but I mean, who the hell's going to order $3,500 sheets of paper with him writing stuff on it? I don't think it's happening.
You are talking about his fan base, Stranger Things. How many?
Well, 6 people, maybe one of them will do it.
That's, kind of what I'm getting at. Ultimately there will be at least one person that will dip into that. What is it? 125 for both the Kiss and the
no, nobody
Invasion lyrics.
That. No, there's no way. Nobody's gonna give him that kind of money.
How is Kiss not stopping him from doing this? Is that because he's flying so far under the radar that they haven't, the lawyers haven't gotten involved? Because if he hasn't written some of these lyrics, because he's just saying that it's just Kiss lyrics. So if Paul Stanley or Gene Simmons say, I wrote those lyrics, then he'd have to share the profits with them.
I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, he doesn't have any money anyway. So, I'm sure that they keep tabs on what goes on. I know there's people that report this stuff back to Paul and Gene.
Is it possible that this is his way of paying to get to the end of the road to be part of the tour?
No. Oh man, there'll be, I can guarantee, world peace in the Middle East before that ever happens. That's not happening. Democrats and Republicans will unite as one before that happens.
Since I brought up the end of the road, Doc McGee has been saying that Ace and Peter will show up. I kind of think that it's more likely that we'll see Bruce Kulick playing with them before we see Ace and Peter.
Oh yeah, I don't think Ace and Peter get on a stage with them. The only way it would happen would be if they absolutely know that X date at X location in New York is going to be the final show.
Yep.
And they really want to go out and just say, let's let bygones be bygones and end on a high note for the fans. Maybe. But even that, I think, is a pretty big long shot. There's just a lot of hurt feelings there between those guys. And they can't even get Ace and Peter to sit down for a fucking documentary. I mean, it's not going to happen. And Vinny will not be part of it. I guarantee that. The way Paul Stanley feels about Vinny to this day, and now Gene after what happened in Nashville, it's not that. There's no way he'll never get invited to anything of theirs. But I think during the tour, Bruce is about the only one you could count on possibly showing up and getting on stage.
Right. The other thing you have to take into consideration, David just said it in the chat, they're both going to want a boatload of money to be involved.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe at the end of the day, Gene and Paul will say, hey, not for nothing, but we're selling out Shea Stadium without them. So why do we have to cut them in on this?
Well, and that's a lot. That's why I say it's still a long shot that they do it, because that's probably going to be their way of thinking is, what do we need these guys for? They're bitter and they're going to want, basically equal billing and it's going to cause, and the amount of shit talk that's going to come from everyone's camps leading up to it. That happened with the Hall of Fame too. There was that, of anything, not that I don't give a fuck about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but at the same time, it would have been nice if they could have, buried the hatchet a little bit on that. And, the Hall of Fame, this is one time where I kind of agree with the Hall of Fame. Like, they were inducting the 4 original members. So once that was established, I know Paul had a problem with it. They said they want the originals to get up on stage and do a few songs, and Ace and Peter were for doing it, but Paul and Gene didn't want to do it without Eric and Tommy. But they should have done something. And there was a lot of like verbal shit going back and forth between their camps in the weeks leading up to that. I remember that they were, and a lot more from Paul and Gene's side, actually. So, and I think they're still resentful that a lot of people view Kiss as those 4 guys and not the other guys. Right.
Well, also, you just to play a little devil's advocate here again, before Unplugged, we all know that almost never took place, and they had to keep, paying them more and more until they finally agreed to a price to actually appear. The same thing happened a few times during, the various tours where they came back. So, I mean, on the flip side, was that Gene and Paul also their way of getting back at Ace and Peter and saying, look, you're in a position where we don't have to pay you shit. And this is our turn to, throw up the middle fingers back at you this time and saying, this time you're not screwing us.
Well, it's the whole situation is like, and you have multiple kids, so you'll get this analogy really easily, where you have your 2 children, and you're not in the room where whatever caused this fight goes down, and they're slapping each other, and you walk in, and then you sit each one down, and each of them give you a very valid argument for their side, and then as a parent, you're kind of like, well, damn, how do I decide who's the good guy and the bad guy here? I feel that way with these guys. If you talk to Ace and Peter and you sat them in a room together and said, give us your side of the story, they could probably make a pretty compelling case why Gene and Paul are the bad guys. And then you do the vice versa, put Paul and Gene in a room, and they'll do the same thing with Ace and Peter. And, everybody's got there's black and white, and there's a lot of gray in this relationship. So it's, and especially society today, everybody wants everything in absolutes. So either you're a good guy or you're a bad guy. Well, it's not that way with human beings. Everybody's got good and bad points. So I can see I can see both arguments. I don't blame Paul and Gene for continuing on. If things aren't stable with Peter and Ace, and they still want to go out and they can still put people in arenas, which they can. How do you blame them for doing it? They own the name, they own the characters. So, and Ace and Peter made the decision to sign those characters away. So they only have themselves to blame for that.
Right.
Do I think it's in good taste? No, I don't. I think it would have been better if they gave them new characters or just dropped the makeup altogether. Or honestly, I think they should have retired several years ago, but that's more due to Paul Stanley's voice than anything else.
Right. Yeah. I've always looked at it this way from Gene and Paul's side of things too, is whether you want to knock them or not for, maybe playing smaller venues or, to places that aren't as filled. Ace and Peter really haven't been able to play beyond theaters unless they're playing direct support to somebody else. So I also think that it's kind of overvalued by people to say, oh, look, with Ace and Peter, they were able to sell out all these shows on this tour. Yes and no, because I think they're also doing a lot more shows than they necessarily have to do now. Whereas when they did the farewell tour and the original reunion tour and everything in between, I don't think they were playing as many dates as they were doing now. And that's even without Paul's voice being as shot. So I think, like you're saying, there's a lot of different ways to look at things, and it isn't as cut and dry. It isn't as, it isn't all absolutes. It isn't one guy's the absolute bad guy. No, it's probably somewhere in the middle of everyone's story is where everything lies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd love it if they do one last show and they bring everyone back, even Vinny. I mean, I don't care for him as a guy, but he's a huge part. He's a very important part of that band's history. So I think it would be cool to have him involved, even if he just goes up there and plays Lick It Up and just plays the chords or whatever. It's just. Well, I'm not really making a joke there. It's. I don't know what his ability level is because I'm not paying $500 to find out, but I don't know. I think Bruce and Vinny and Ace and Peter should all be involved with that, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know it's going to be interesting to see what happens because, after they were supposed to wrap everything up this July until COVID hit. So now what are they going to do? Go into like 2023 now? I mean, and can they really go that long? I don't know that they're going to be able to wrap it up the way they really want to wrap it up at this point.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing, and I've thought about this more than once. We obviously all know that they're not young guys. Yeah. What if Gene or Paul, something happens to them health-wise, and they just have, and they can't do the duration of the tour, like you're saying, are they still thinking of doing 2 years worth of touring, or has it?
No.
And what are the legal ramifications there? Because I mean, imagine if they say, "Hey, you know what? We can only do a year. We'll do the festivals in Europe. We'll hit the big cities in the U.S., but then we're done. We can't do the secondary markets. We can't do." We can only do 50 more shows and we're done. Do they end up having to pay, to pay promoters, or, given COVID and the force majeure, clauses in insurance, does that help them to say, hey, look, a guy's 70 something years old. He can't go out there and physically do this anymore. So you can't sue him.
I mean, I gotta think that it gets pretty cutthroat behind this. I mean, what I do with ROCKNPOD and the little stuff I put on compared to major events through like Live Nation, and I can't imagine the amount of red tape and stuff you have to go through because if you thought the business was cutthroat before, I mean, imagine coming out of a pandemic now, right? It's gonna be even harder. So, but I mean, with everything that went down over the past year, I mean, yeah, they would probably have to. It depends on if they have shows on the books that refunds would have to go out for. I got to think there would be some sort of penalty to the band for that. But I mean, they can afford it. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But
Right.
I don't think you can't just wipe the slate clean and say, "Oh, okay, guys, go back to your mansions. We'll take care of all the refunds." I don't think it would work that way. They would have to pay
Right.
something, I'm sure.
Yeah. If you had to guess, last Vinny question of the night, can he still play the solo to All Hell's Breaking Loose?
I haven't really seen any profound evidence that he can. And I know that from behind the scenes when he played at the Cruise Fest thing a couple of years ago, he showed up and he did Lick It Up and didn't do the solo. And he stayed on stage for Cold Gin, but he didn't even get to rehearse with the band, and he really looked freaked out at that. But I do know that he was supposed to play All Hell's Breaking Loose with the band, and he backed out.
Huh. Well,
I hope that's okay for me to share, but yeah.
The riff out of those three songs that you mentioned, All Hell's Breaking Loose is the most complex of the three riffs.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
the solo isn't really technically that hard, but I don't know. It's a lot of like pull offs and stuff. It's not and that's just, I don't know. I don't know if he can play. I mean, and then everybody, the people that I know that have gone to these events of his, they claim that he can play just like the '80s, but I don't know, man. Something right. Smells rotten with that whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I got to pull this. I got to show this. All right. So somebody just chimed in on Facebook. We can't see who you are. So if you can go to this link and just to prove so that your identity is shared with us here in the chat. That's Facebook's funkiness there. So
yeah, maybe they don't want us to know who they are.
Maybe they don't. Maybe they're wearing some. No, I said I wasn't going to say anything else, so I won't.
It's all good. I know he's gonna come up either way, and I've had so many people bugging me this week about are you gonna go to his thing this weekend? I'm like, no. Like I wouldn't be able to get in even if I wanted to. There's no way.
There you go. Well, where's Jesus, I'm reading the chat and I'm brain farting while I'm talking to you here. What I meant to say is, were you aware of, I just saw this in the Brave Words group earlier today, that Goran Edman is basically saying that Vinny ripped him off, that he was supposedly auditioning for 14 days and those 14 days ended up being demos?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard him talk about that before in an interview.
Okay.
He was it was a pretty slick move on Vinny's part to get him out there to basically do a whole record for free.
Right.
Yeah, I heard about that. And that, although the part from that, I did listen to the little clip, and the part that I didn't know was that apparently while he was in town doing this, that Vinny took the demos over to Chrysalis and said, "Hey, I'm working with this great singer, Goran Edman. You wanna do something?" And that they essentially said, "Well, we just signed your band and don't want you, and so thanks, but no thanks."
Oh wow.
That must have been awkward.
Yeah, that's that's if nothing else. Yeah. We just signed your band. With him thinking that they had no leg to stand on, but that was the extent of that conversation with Chrysalis.
Yeah.
He's promising music in the next 12 to 18 months.
How did this I came on to talk about ROCKNPOD and this turned into a whole Vinny Vincent discussion.
You brought him up. Brought him up.
I brought him up for one line and then you just ran with it from there, but that's all right. New music? No, never happens. And I love that he said 12 to 18 months. It's like, what's the whole
right?
You say that so you buy yourself a year and a half. Right. And then by that point, people don't care anymore.
That's that's a crowdfunding move. Yeah, we'll get it to you anywhere between 12 12 to 18 months. And then if you're lucky, 3 years later, it shows up. A Quiet Riot documentary.
Oh, I thought you were talking about a Kiss related book.
Well,
it's another long story, but no, that'll it'll show up when his autobiography and the box set and what else did he have on the the tour? And yeah, he says he's going to tour. Get the fuck out of here. I'll bet you $5,000 that it doesn't come to fruition.
which one of those things?
Pick one. The thing he has the best shot at doing would be his book, because that doesn't require him playing any music.
Okay. But the music that he's talking about is stuff that technically he recorded back in the 90s. It isn't as if it's new music.
Well,
he's
that's
saying,
what I can't figure out. It's like, what's the holdup? Just
Right.
put it out then. People put music out all the time.
He's got to convert it from 2-inch tape. And I was reading the whole thing. I'm like, when are these assholes going to learn that, unless you're Dave Grohl or unless you're someone big who people can get behind and know that, okay, Dave Grohl has a Neve, mixing table and everything that he got from Sound City and so on and so forth. That's a big deal. But to the general public, like the average Kiss fan, they could care less if it's on 2-inch tape, if it's on duct tape, if it's anywhere. They just want to hear the damn music.
Well, I don't know. He doesn't care about, I don't know. He all he cares about is money, but it's the whole perfectionism thing or overthinking stuff, where I think he enjoys making plans and making big flowery announcements more so than actually delivering a product. I don't think he really cares about delivering a product. He just likes seeing people get excited about it. I really think that's all it is. Yeah.
Anyway, back to ROCKNPOD. See, it's funny. I was going to bring up the fact that if there had been a birthday party this year, you guys could have extended down the hall with tables for podcasters, but I digress.
Gotcha. We are going to be doing some stuff at SIR this year on the day after the expo, but that ties into a couple of guests that I can't say anything about just yet.
See, so you're a tease. You're bringing up. All right. So you're teasing something at SIR. Can you talk about anything that's supposed to take place on Sunday?
Well, it's going to be a couple of musician clinics.
Okay.
Like masterclass type stuff. And then a live podcast with a couple of the guests that we're going to announce.
Okay.
I have to leave it at that. I can't say anything else.
Okay. But there are other things taking place on Sunday outside of that.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be at a place called the High Watt downtown. So we have, for the expo coming in, we've got Craig Gass, Don Jameson from That Metal Show, and Courtney Cronin-Dold coming back this year. And they're going to be at the expo all day. And Don's going to do his podcast live. And then also Saturday night, we're going to be doing a special event that will only be for ROCKNPOD ticket buyers, but it's a movie screening, but the tickets won't go on sale until a specific time, and it's going to be very limited. So if you haven't bought a ticket, you have to buy a ticket to even get access to buy a ticket for the movie screening. But I'll leave that alone. But they're going to do like a MST3K type of commentary thing, and that's going to be fun. But then Sunday, they're booking a comedy show at a place called the High Watt downtown, which is in the same building we're doing the pre-party at. We're doing the pre-party at Mercy Lounge, and then the High Watt is upstairs from that. And it's a comedy show with the three of them doing their own sets, but sorry. Indigestion. But there's a thing that Courtney does out in LA called punchlines and backlines. And the basis for that is the comedians do sets, but also they bring up a like notable rock musician or singer to do a stand-up set of their own. And they have to go up in front of a crowd and do stand-up comedy. and they've done it in the past. Like Chad Stewart from Faster Pussycat's done it, and several other people. But they're bringing it here. See, David Cathy's no, I'm not drinking today. But they're bringing it here, and they're working on a special guest for that. But again, they haven't confirmed the guest they're working on. But if they get a yes, it's going to be pretty cool.
It's going to be one of the guitarists of Primrose Way.
No. You couldn't pay me enough money to do stand-up comedy. That sounds completely frightening to me. I hate getting up just doing the raffle at ROCKNPOD.
But you're not the only guitarist that was in the band. I didn't know
the other guitarist. Well, you really don't want the other guitarists getting up doing stand-up comedy. I'll just say that. Unless you're into very avant-garde, batshit crazy comedy, you don't want that.
Hey, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
I love the guy. I love the guy, but I don't know if stand-up comedy's for him.
All right,
long story. I can always count on you and Toomey to bring up my band from high school that played to all of 50 people. It's wonderful.
Well, could be worse.
There is video online of it, just so you know.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Under the band name?
Don't bring it up on here. But yeah, there is stuff on YouTube.
We'll share it in the show notes, folks. So that way,
have fun with that. See me in my my leopard skin guitar strap,
right?
Playing grunge music with a mullet.
Well, the mullet is coming back into style. Didn't you see? What was the big uproar? The guy from Blur, Damon Albarn or whatever his name is. He had a mullet at some award show, and people were going crazy. I'm thinking, not for nothing, but you could have walked into any trailer park and seen that hairdo for the last 40 years. So
I don't know if a guy that's in a band that's no longer in style sporting a haircut that's no longer in style makes it coming back in style, but I get it.
Yeah, well, he's such a maestro in music between that and the Gorillaz and all the other nonsense he's put out. Yeah, I was with Toomey. I brought up. I said, "Hey, did you get that Knotfest gig just because you had a leopard print bass strap? There has to be some pull."
Oh yeah, there's some funny photos of Toomey from back in the day online too.
Oh, I've seen him post a bunch.
He's very upfront about it. He's not afraid to shame himself.
Yeah, well, had to do what he had to do. That was different time, different place.
Well, when your claim to fame is Primer 55, so I see why he wants to make fun of my band.
Well, he's not
watching this anyway, so I don't care.
He was in two other bands though.
No, he was in an amazing local Nashville band called 12 Volt Negative Earth that I actually used to go see.
Okay.
They were a fucking great band. He was also in another local band called Tall in Tokyo, and I think me and about 4 other people would remember them, but that band didn't last long, but they were great. But yeah, 12 Volt Negative Earth was a really, really good band.
Right. Yeah, and I seem to remember, did they end up recording anything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they put at least one record out, maybe more than one.
Yeah, I kind of want to think that I remember seeing their albums, like at least an EP and a full length at one point.
Yeah. And those of us that were in the local scene here, the 12 Volt was the band that everybody was like, they're going to make it out of here. They're going to get,
right.
They're going to sign and they're going to break big. And I thought they were going to break big because they were that good, but
right.
Nashville always had a big stigma, especially back in those days. We had some great like new metal and modern metal bands in the early to mid 2000s. There was another one called, oh shit. Now, of course, my mind's going to go blank, but they were fucking amazing. And I even booked them. I can't remember their name right now. That's pretty sad. It'll come to me in a little bit, but they were nobody's gonna know who they are anyway. But I thought they were gonna break big also. There was another one called Return to Self. They were a big one. But yeah, there was a good scene here, and a lot of bands that were really doing stuff that fit well with what was happening at the time. But everybody's like, oh, they're from Nashville, so screw them. That was kind of the viewpoint a lot of times.
That sucks. It's interesting that so many people have gone there though over the course of last 15 years, 20 years, would you say? Yeah. It seems as if the bigger bands getting attention out of Nashville are all bands that aren't originally from Nashville.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that come here because of the industry and then they make it out of here. But
right.
Yeah, not a lot of homegrown talent. Well, I'm sure the talent's here, but it just seems like they're just, as somebody that used to book local, and obviously, and I'm not talking about Josh's band because they work their asses off, but there was a lot of bands that were great bands that they wouldn't put the work in. So, no matter how good they were, they just expected someone to kind of come in and scoop them up and give them a record deal. Yeah. And it doesn't work that way. You really have to hustle for it. So there were several bands where I think if they had put the work in and hustled more and schmoozed more, because it's all about relationships. It's
right.
You can be amazing, but if you don't make those connections and network like you're supposed to, then you're not going to go anywhere. And that's the sad truth.
Yeah. It's kind of a Cinderella train of thought. And I don't mean the band. I mean the fable. You're waiting for your Prince Charming to come along and sweep you off of your feet. But the music industry isn't like that. You have to have a niche, or you have to have something to really stand out from everything else to have something like that happen. If you're just another one of the bunch, another one of the million bands that sound exactly like you, well, what are you doing to separate yourself from the rest? And a lot of bands don't get that. And
it's not a rock and roll thing, but like I've there's several people that come to make it in country here, and it's even worse for them. It's because the amount of competition is just astounding, especially in Nashville. But I've told people, or I'll go. I'm still in like Nashville musician groups on Facebook, and inevitably you'll see people say, "Oh, I want to come to Nashville and I want to make it in country music." And like, what's your advice? And a piece of advice I've given people that I see other people say is, well, when you go out to eat at a restaurant, the person serving you is probably more talented than you are. And remember that. Wow. Because why do you think Nashville has so many restaurants? Because they have so many musicians that need a job. I mean, if you want to play on Lower Broadway and actually play like 4 to 6 hour sets of covers and stuff like that in these honky tonks, you got to make some serious connections. And when you do start playing, you're going to get paid jack shit, and you really got to work your way up. You do have to pay your dues here. That's still true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's almost a parallel to, a lot of conversations that we've had regarding podcasting. How many people have thought that they were going to just jump on into podcasting and it was going to be gangbusters? Oh, I've got, millions of fans. I'm going to make all this money. And they just didn't put entertaining shows together. Just because you have a mic in front of you and you just sit and talk about yourself doesn't mean that you're going to connect with your audience. You have to give them something of an entertaining value. And I'm not saying, that what I do is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but there are a lot of people, and we've talked about this, with the pandemic, there have been so many podcasts that have sprouted up. There have been so many, other different apps and different avenues to kind of sort of, podcast, whether it's Clubhouse, whether it's Fireside, there's a bunch of different things. And I think that once this is all done and we're seeing that bands are going to start touring again, a lot of bands that have podcasts were forced to do podcasts by their labels, because they wanted to keep, their names out there. I interviewed the Canadian band Sumo Psycho a few weeks ago, and it's amazing that they own a church in Hamilton, Ontario. It's an old church. They bought it, and they use it to shoot videos, to record, to do, I don't know how many things. They do stuff with a lot of bands from Ontario as well, where they produce them or they help them shoot videos. But they haven't stopped at all during this whole pandemic. Obviously, they have the ability to, they have property to be able to do it. But you also have to have that drive and creativity to want to do that stuff and to offer something to your fans and like realize, kind of what you're saying, if you don't hustle for it, there's someone else out there that will do it.
Oh, sure.
There's so many bands that I've seen where I've read online. Yeah, we finished our album, a year and a half ago, but we're just sitting on things right now, and we're gonna wait until the pandemic is done to promote things or to do this or to do that. And it's like, what are you waiting for? No social media presence, no nothing. So of course the label is forcing them to do something to continue their presence, because if not,
well, you can't. I mean, you can't view it through the old lens. I mean, the old lens was do an album and then tour on it. Well, you can't tour right now, but at the same time, it's like you've got more people at home with disposable time to listen to your stuff. I mean, look what AC/DC did last year. I mean, they put out a brand new record in the middle of all this when they absolutely couldn't tour.
Yep.
And the amount of press they got for that record was that's the biggest press AC/DC's gotten in 20 years. It has to be.
Right. Yeah. And, but again, they went out of their way. They released 4 videos for the album.
No, they went full bore with the promotional part of it.
Yeah. They did behind the scenes stuff. My kids went apeshit because they were on Fortnite. They had an AC/DC night on Fortnite where they did like it was like some sort of a concert where they took like old live songs and they digitalized it so that like there was like an SG that appeared in the AC/DC logo, and it was playing music, AC/DC music, while people were playing Fortnite in the background. My kids went crazy for that stuff. So, they had the presence of mind too, as you're saying, hey, we can't tour, but we've got this album. We got to promote it somehow. And true to form, if I'm not mistaken, they released that album in November, and it was still one of the biggest albums of last year.
Easily. Yeah. Well, and this is going to sound funny because when you consider the previous track record, and this is, probably more a product of his record company than anything, but Ace Frehley last year, I mean, with the amount of different, colored discs and stuff that E1 put out for his material, I bet you he cleaned up on that stuff. He had to, or at least the record company did. But or another good example is Michael Sweet with Stryper. Stryper's not for everybody, but they did live interviews. They did they played one of the albums from front to back live on a live stream.
Right.
You got to think outside the box, especially during a pandemic. You can't get out and play, so you might as well find other ways to entertain your audience. And I've told you about this before, but a person I know in the record industry that works with a label that I'm not going to mention the name of, but this label has worked with a lot of bands we grew up on, and they and some of these bands would and the result, and he told me the results you get, it depends on what you get out of it is what you put into it. And you can only expect the label to do so much for you. It's different times. Right. Labels don't have multi-million budgets anymore to market your stuff. And be like Stryper, get online and, promote the hell out of your stuff, and you'll see the results in your sales. But if you're a band from the 80s that the album gets put out and you just sit back and don't do any work to promote it, well, you know what your results are going to be? They're not going to be good.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, look what we're doing tonight. You're telling me that bands couldn't do this. They couldn't just go out and do like a live stream, have like once a month where it's just a question and answer, or, every Friday night for an hour, just chime in and talk about an album, talk about, kind of what Bruce Kulick was doing initially.
Bruce has done an amazing job over the past year. I mean, my hat's really off to him because he even learned the technology and he does his own editing and stuff. And I mean, I've seen Bruce is more visible now than he was for the past 25 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Today is actually the 1 year anniversary of the passing of his brother, of Bob. And we're approaching June. I was working on your website, and there was a draft post from Adam Cox that was never posted.
Really?
Yeah. And it was something that he started, but the article wasn't finished. So instantly I saw that and I was like, wow, it seems like eons now from
I'll
when,
have to go look at that.
yeah, when he was last with us. He was such an important part of, what you do. He was a big proponent of what I do. He was huge, and he's very much missed. It's interesting. I have Jeremy who's in the chat. Jeremy who's in the chat is from the UK as well. Similar to Adam in his fervor and following of podcasts and really promoting stuff that he really enjoys. It's really amazing how, we talked about this last week. We did our Iron Maiden discography discussion, and I wanted to have Jeremy on because it was so different how Iron Maiden came about in the UK to how it came about with us in the States.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing where they grew up appreciating music and different things in a different fashion to how we did. So it also kind of translates how they get behind shows and bands and different things like that. So Adam was a great guy that left us all of a sudden. He died in his sleep, I believe, right?
Yeah. It was a heart issue.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about him the other day. Well, yeah, those are the people that, and like, you and I and, Aaron and everybody that do these shows, like, we don't view ourselves as having any kind of fame or notoriety or anything. And like, people that support us, I view them as friends, not as fans, because we're all just fans that picked up microphones. I mean, that's, and that's all we still are, in my opinion, and people that, constantly share the links. David Cathy, I got to see Rock and Rose in the chat. People like you guys, you make it worth doing because, it means the world to us that you guys appreciate what we do. And people and Adam was just truly one of those people. And never asked for a dime for anything, but just loved what we did and wanted to share in that. And he's I miss him a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said this to a lot of different people behind the scenes. One of the reasons why I ramped things back up with the podcast is doing these Friday night shows, because just getting to interact with people, and it definitely has lit a fire under me again. Really made me appreciate stuff a lot more, and I'm so appreciative of, I say this week after week with my show. Last week's show was all about the patrons. The patrons that could make it were on the show with me discussing Iron Maiden. I know that not everyone can, give up $2 because everyone is in a different situation. Times are tough, but it's just as important for people to like and to share and, bug their favorite artist. Hey, so-and-so, was talking about you, in a positive way. So, go on this person's show. I'm sure you'll do a great interview, things like that. Those are things that someone like an Adam Cox was doing continuously. And, and I always say it, and I don't mean it to bullshit anyone. I appreciate anyone who spends the time with me, whether it's live, whether they get to listen to the podcast, afterwards or whatever. I'm just very grateful for, almost 12 years into this, that people still give a crap to want to spend some of their time with me to hear me blab about music and, maybe talk to, talk to someone that's known, or just have a great conversation about whatever with someone like you. So, I'm very grateful for everyone's support. So,
and just for the record, Victor was the first podcaster that I ever actually talked to when I was thinking about getting into it.
Yes, I had.
And his advice was don't.
Well, the problem was the time that you hit me up was around the time and I will always say this, Chris will always remember, and it's funny because from an economic standpoint, where maybe I have always struggled, you've had better fortunes than I have.
Yeah, I'm really rolling in the money, Victor.
Well, let me put it to you this way. In 12 years, I've maybe made $50 off of Amazon.
Well, at least you're still on Amazon. I got kicked off.
I read my emails, my friend.
No, they kicked me off without warning, actually.
They actually, around the time that you guys got kicked off, like for 3 months before that, they were sending out emails saying you need to have this specific wording when bringing up links.
I never got that.
That's in that double secret spam filter.
No. Believe me, I really researched this because we were selling a lot of product for those guys. And I was like, how are you going to kick us off? We were selling a lot of money worth of advertising, a lot of products for them. And we made a little bit of, we didn't make a lot, but it was still cool to read the list of what people bought and everything. And it's just like out of nowhere, you're gone. And I scrounged through all of my email for that. They didn't send me any warning. It's just an email out of nowhere. You're done. I was like, really?
Yeah. Scrooge McDuck over here is saying that he was never rolling in the money, while in 12 years, $50. No lie.
Okay. Well,
I've been at like the $86 threshold for like 7 years, where it's like, well, no, this doesn't qualify. Well, actually this, even though this costs someone $800, you're only getting 2.5 cents for it. There's all this like craziness behind how they split things up. It's just ridiculous.
Because Amazon knows how to make money for themselves.
Absolutely. But what I'm getting at is kind of the conversation that I mentioned before. I had like the day that you contacted me or the day before, where someone said, literally, I sold X amount of albums in the 80s. I have all of these fans, so I'm going to be making money with podcasting in no time. And they asked me,
I know who you're talking about.
and I said, well, I've been doing this. I think at that point I may have been doing it like about a year and a half, somewhere in that nature. Well, you had just started your show up, and I'm about to hit 12 years, and you're about to hit 10, right?
We just passed the 10-year mark.
Okay. So I was, when you contacted me, I was like 18 months, 2 years into the whole process. So it was around that time. And I told this person, I said, look, you may have sold 1 million albums, but 1% of those album buyers are your diehard audience. And I told them 1% of that 1% is going to be willing to spend money on you in, 2011 at that point in time. And they got pissed off at me. They were like, that can't be the case, blah, 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 And what ended up happening is this person actually never ended up doing a podcast. But they automatically thought that, oh, I'm going to be making this much money. And they told me it was so easy, and it was this, and it was that. And it's like we talked about before, unless you work it, you're not going to get squat out of it.
Well, and if you're going into it with the subject, with the motivation of just money, then don't bother. It's not you have to enjoy what you're doing, build an audience, and then if you're lucky, money will come, but it can't be about money. It's, that's the wrong way of looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And also those that have made, or those that are making big money off of this now, a lot of people I know get on the case of like a Joe Rogan or stuff like that. Let's be honest, folks. Any podcaster that's listening, Spotify comes to you right now and throws not even Joe Rogan money. Let's say Spotify comes to you and says, I want Decibel Geek to be a Spotify exclusive. We'll pay you $1,000 a month to be a Spotify exclusive.
$1,000 a month? Probably wouldn't do that.
5.
That might push me in that direction. Yeah.
Okay. So if you get to a number where it's comfortable enough for you, it's similar to.
If I could give up my job, that would probably do it. Because then
Well,
I
there
could
you
put that much more material out, you know?
Right. So there are people complaining about what he took, but let's look at what he's done. But most people just say, "Oh, well, he's just a big mouth podcaster," and I don't listen to Joe Rogan, but I admire that. What's that?
I used to listen to him a lot, but I haven't really so much since he moved to Spotify. I mean, I'll still just watch YouTube clips, and that's pretty much it.
Right. Well, so he was a stand-up comedian. He did Fear Factor,
and he was on that
UFC,
and he was on
News Radio.
News Radio. Yeah.
Yeah. So, to my point, he's worked a lot of years and garnered an audience before he came to podcasting.
Yeah, and he also garnered a lot of connections through those jobs that made guests for his early days.
Correct.
Yeah.
So similar, a lot of people bring up Marin. Similar deal. A lot of people,
entertainer.
Yeah. Adam Carolla.
Yeah, they all had a built-in audience when they started.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I've had this discussion with many a podcaster behind the scenes. They're like, "Well, why does he have that audience?" And I want to build to that, but I'm not even scraping it. Well, because if you were on TV for 10 years, you've got millions of people that know who you are.
Sure.
So if 1% of that 3 million is 300,000 that are listening to your podcast, it's going to be easier for you to jump to a Spotify or to jump to all this other stuff, as opposed to us that, in the grand scheme of things, it'll be impossible for us to even come remotely close to that. Again, we're talking about Toomey before. Toomey will be, out of our group, of podcasters, Toomey's the closest to any of us that could possibly get somewhere, that could possibly get to a 10th of what, an audience of what these people are getting.
Yeah. But I mean, although my circle's a little different than it used to be. I mean, we joined Pantheon last year, so I've made friends and connections with several of the shows on that network, and there's some shows on that network that could break bigger, like Rock and Roll Archaeology, and that's one of the founders' shows.
Okay.
That one's gotten like some major press and stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you're talking about like the original ROCKNPOD kind of grouping of shows, yeah, I'd say Toomey, he's up there. Yeah, for sure. Of course, and I've always said, Rock and Metal Combat could do that. They could probably get much bigger, but it would take motivation on their part to really work those angles and those connections, which they could, but it's like, I don't know that they choose to. I think they're happy with how things are, and that's fine. Right. I love their show for what it is, but as far as entertainment value, I think they're up there too.
Yeah, I don't discount that at all, and it's a similar deal to what we've been talking about. Still, if they're able to leverage their connections, I mean, look at everything that Ralph has done outside of that podcast.
Absolutely, he's done
to be a known entity. He's done quite a bit. So,
yeah, and I don't know. And I've told podcasters this for years. Like, I have people cutting, I've got a show and I'm bummed and I can't, I've got like 250 downloads, per episode, and I get bummed about that. But I try to, and this is some advice somebody gave to me when I started out was, well, don't view it as a digital number. View it as you're standing in front of a room of 250 people. I mean, it's essentially the same thing, because those people chose to download and listen to your show.
Right.
It's no different than them showing up to see you speak live. And when you look at it that way, it kind of gives you a better perspective of, well, that's actually a pretty good sized room full of people. So I shouldn't view it as nothing, because it is something,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So, in any event, as per what usually happens, we've gone over the 1 hour limit that I had promised that we would keep it to.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I've had fun.
As have I. Any last plugs?
Yeah, for you and me, this is a short conversation, so it's no big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. This is like a regular conversation. This, again, we always say this when me and Chris get together. It is like a fly on the wall conversation. This is what our regular phone calls are like. So,
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to plug that we didn't bring up during the episode?
Well, just get all the detail. Come to ROCKNPOD. It's August 6th through the 8th in Nashville. Go to rocknpod.com or NashvilleRockNPodExpo.com and stay tuned for updates. Look us up on the on Facebook. That's the main place you can get updates. But more guest announcements coming next week and some other cool stuff too. But yeah, as many of you that can make it in August, we'd love to see you there. It's going to be a lot of fun. And one year, Victor is going to actually come. I'm going to see if we can make that happen.
Well, if I can sell enough websites, if people see the ROCKNPOD site and like what they see, you need a website. Let me know. You need a website. I'll hook you up.
Let me give you credit. Yeah, if you've checked out the ROCKNPOD site, you see how amazing it looks. That's because of this guy here, not because of me. So he's done a lot of great work on it, and he's dealt with my neurosis and insanity at times. And you're a good friend and a great IT person for us. So yeah, without you, a lot of this would not run the way it does.
Well, I appreciate that, and I can still remember the initial conversation with you to try to move in this direction. So it was cool that we were actually able to make it happen, and it, you tweak the ideas from year to year, but it's still kind of the original kind of format that you wanted to go with. But I think it looks cool, looks respectable. And I think when we first started talking about building the site, we were looking at other things, and one of the ideas that I had was, let's build something more professional looking and something that doesn't look like anything else.
Right.
Because
Victor stopped me from building a Wix site for the ROCKNPOD Expo. That's a true story.
Yeah, I've talked to many people about that, but I don't know if or not talked to them about not going the Wix route, but it hasn't worked as well as it did with you. So
oh boy. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't make that mistake.
There you go. So awesome. I want to thank everyone that's joined us in the chat tonight, from Rob Rowe to David Cathy to Jeremy Weltman. I saw earlier, I saw Jose from Connecticut. I saw the metal dentist, Gabriel Ruiz, who was the anonymous Facebook messenger before. And I want to thank anyone else that, again, watches this or listens to this later in the Memorex version. And that's that. Thanks for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this discussion between Mr. Czynszak and myself. And again, go to ROCKNPOD if you're looking for any information about the expo. You're kind of on a fence, just go to either the Facebook or go to NashvilleRockNPodExpo.com and check it out. That is it, folks. Thanks once again for spending your Friday night with me, and hope you guys all have a great weekend. See you guys.
See you.